Welcome to Phil's Sewing Virtual Club. My name's Cindy, and today we're going to go over some of the features of the edge-to-edge quilting that is available with the Vision machine, the new Vision, or you can also purchase Solaris 3 Upgrade. And the upgrade kit includes the new foot control, a 10x10 magnetic frame, a great stylist, and the new N Plus foot. So what we're going to do today is we're going to create fabric using edge-to-edge quilting with the upgrade, and we're going to show you how you can do this and make your own fabric. And I turned this fabric into a pillow, so you can create whatever quilted fabric you want, any size you want, and you can create just anything. You can create garments, you can create jackets, pillows, wall hangings. I have a little wall hanging here that I picked up, and I like this little saying, and I just put a little border around it, and this is going to make a really quick gift. And you sandwich, I use cotton in the back, and I use 501 spray, and then I you know, the temporary adhesive, and then just made my quilt sandwich. And it's that way I can use this edge to edge and create my wall hanging. I also, you can use either cotton batting or you can use a fusion fleece, which I've been using, and that works really well. You can also use the same bobbin thread if the back is going to show, or you can just use your pre-wound bobbin for embroidery thread is what I use for this. So the first thing we did is I'm going to make a 14 by 14 pillow. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add an inch for seam allowances. So I'm going to make a 15-inch by 15-inch square. And I already fused my fusion fleece onto the back of my cotton fabric. Now, I don't need to make a sandwich. I don't need a back piece because this is going to be encased inside the pillow. So right now, I'm only going to use 2 layers. So I do have my 2 squares, the front and back, and I marked on the side. I'm using a friction pen, so if I make a mistake, I just iron it out. And so I've created my embroidery. Now the first thing we're going to do is go to the machine, and we're going to set up for quilting this piece with the edge to edge. Now the first thing we want to do is make sure we have the correct measurements. So I'm using my tape measure and measuring my width, which is 15, and then my height, which is 15. So I know I've got the correct measurements. Now I'm going to set up my embroidery in the machine. Now you can see we have a few new things here on the Solaris. I have upgraded my Solaris with the 3 upgrade, and the long stitch designs and the new couching letters and some of the new designs here, but we'll get into that at another time. Right now we're going to concentrate on the quilting. So I'm going to select that, and we have the 1 color, 2 color, these are borders, the hexagon. The new one we're going to work with today is the edge-to-edge quilting. So we've got 10 designs here to choose from on edge-to-edge. Today we're going to choose this little sewing theme. And once you select it, you just select set. Now, we did measure our fabric, and it's automatically going to guide me through everything I need to do to set this up. The first, number 1, is your width. Our width was 15 inches, and I just set that. Number 2 is the length, and that was 15 inches, and I'm setting that. Now the next option is we're going to use the new 10 by 10 magnetic frame. So we're going to select the 10 by 10. The next option is your flip option. Now you can have them all going the same way, or you can have them mirrored, or you can have them flipped, or flip the other way. So right now I'm just going to keep it all mirrored. Okay, so that's my selection. I'm just going to say okay. Now we've got everything completed, and the screen's telling me that there's 3 pieces and 2 rows. Okay, so that's going to give me the embroidery area is 7.27 by 5, and we're going to need that because we're going to need to show the previous embroidery in order to connect them. So at this point, we're just going to click next. And this is telling me that there's 2 rows and there's 3 embroideries across. Here's where I would choose either just single stitch or triple stitch. This is like a bean stitch. And here's where I would change my color. So if I wanted to change this to, let's just go with let's go with this, the deep gray, and just say okay. Now I've got a visual of what that deep gray is going to look like with my quilt or my quilted fabric. Now the next step is a select memory, and you're going to get a notification that the data was saved in the machine's memory. Embroider the data, and you want to say okay. So now it comes in my machine memory, and it in the bottom corner it does say, it's hard to see it, but it says 15 by 15 here, and it does say there's 6 hoopings. So I'm going to select this one, and in the event you ever need them, it does have each individual hooping too. So there are 6. This is A1, A2, A3, Z1, Z2, and Z3. Okay, so all I have to do at this point is select the first one and then set it. Okay, my machine's going to walk me through the entire process. It's telling me to begin sewing from the upper left corner of the fabric. Attach the embroidery frame in the initial sewing position. So it's got a visual here of where it wants me to hoop. So I'm going to go a little bit outside, and you want to make sure you're within the embroidery area of that hoop. So when I hoop that, I'm going to leave room on both these sides. Okay, so I'm going to go hoop, and I'll be right back. Now I'm at my cutting table, and I have my 10 by 10 hoop placed on my mat with the grid, which makes it easier. This is the embroidered area within these markings here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line it up, and that's going to make sure that where you're going to put it, insert that hoop on your machine is over to the left. And I've marked my fabric, my 15-inch squares. And now I can use this grid to kind of help me get within my embroidered area. Okay. Now these magnets have a little arrow, and those arrows should be always pointing to the inside of the hoop. And I like to use my magnets to kind of smooth out the fabric I'm hooping. So I want to do opposites here. Then you've got your smaller one, same arrow. Here's the other one. And now at this corner here, you want to make sure that you leave a little bit of room to get that easily on your embroidery arm, because you're going to have to insert your needle through that area. Now that we've got it all hooped, and I just want to show you, if you wanted to remove one of these, this little tool comes with the hoop. You would basically simply rock it into the corner and it just lifts up that easy. So that's what this tool is for, and that does come. So now our top corner, our top left corner, like the machine displays, should be up here, and we're going to now insert it on our machine. Okay, now I'm inserting it, and like I said, we left room here at that corner, and then we're going to install the hoop on the embroidery arm, and I just want to hold back here while I'm pushing so it doesn't get out of alignment. Now we're on the screen here where it showed us where to hoop, and you want to manage this excess fabric over here on this side, because you definitely don't want that to get caught underneath your embroidery. So we've got everything hooped the way it recommended. I'm just going to say okay. Now it's telling me to use the move pattern keys to align the upper left corner of the pattern area with the upper left corner marking of the area to be embroidered. So we've got our corner marked. We say okay, and now the carriage is going to move. Okay, if you see this little crosshair should be up here. So I'm going to use my move keys and move them up. And I'm going to move it over. Now you can see that this is aligned with the T in the top and for this one leg. And you can see possibly part of that design displayed on my fabric here. So the next thing we need to do is say okay, because we got that top corner. Now this is the rotation. And we're going to use the rotate keys to adjust the angle of the pattern while keeping an eye on the points around the pattern. And you'll just say okay. And if you look here, I've got, this needs to probably be moved up one centimeter, I guess. So here you can move in this rotation 10 degrees, this rotation 1 degree, and this rotation 0.1. So I'm going to just do 0.1, and that put that right on that line here. Now to make sure our rotation is all correct, we're going to select this side, and it's right on that line. That's right on the line. Okay. And then the top. It looks like we're all set. We're ready to start the embroidery. And I'm just going to say okay. Now I do want to say that right now I'm just using bobbin thread in my bobbin, a pre-wound embroidery bobbin thread. But you can, if the back side of your quilt's going to show, you can wind bobbins and use the same bobbin thread on the bottom as you do the top, or whatever you choose to do with that. You can mix and match. I would recommend, at least when you're starting out, to use the same thread on the bobbin and the top. So we're getting ready to stitch this. So I'll just put my foot down and start the embroidery. This embroidery is a 3-minute embroidery. We're nearing the end, and it just lock stitched, and now it's going to create some arrows. Okay, now on the screen it tells me the embroidery is finished. Okay, to connect the next pattern. And I'm just going to say okay. And now it's showing me to hoop where it ended here is going to be visible in my hoop on the left side. So I'm going to take it to my table, rehoop, and I'll be back. I did want to mention I'm using a Arrow Quilt variegated thread by Madeira, and just bobbin thread in my bobbin. So I'll be right back and we'll continue on. Now I've rehooped, and I left where we left off right in the embroiderable area of the hooping. And I'm going to slide this in, hold the back of my hoop, and then lock it down. Okay, so now the machine is showing me exactly what I have here. So I'm just going to say okay. Now it says to use the move pattern keys to align the start point with the end point of the previous pattern. So we're just going to say okay here. Okay. So I need to move this up to here. So and that is going to have to come down a little bit. I would take your time to make sure that you got that right on. I think I'm going to move it up just one more. And over. And that looks to be right on. If you can see, that end connects right there at that cross point to where the display of the new embroidery will be. So all we can do right now is check the other corners. Okay, now after we said okay, we're using the rotate keys to adjust the angle of the pattern while keeping an eye on the points around the pattern. And so you'll just say okay. And now we're going to the top, and that just needs to come down just a tad. So I'm going to use the 0.1 millimeter. And another one. And that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to check my other corners. Check our bottom corner. this corner. Okay, and then the top. And if you can see, that's right on the line here also. So we are now ready to stitch. I'm going to say okay. And put my foot down and start sewing. And it's connecting right on to the last of that first hooping. The last step of the first hooping. Now we're coming up to the end of the second stitch out. And there's the end. And now it's going to stitch a placement arrow. And we're going to use those for lining up the next row. So we did have another one on the first stitch out. So now we have 2 arrows for lining up that second row. Now it states that the embroidery is finished, okay to connect to the next pattern, and you just want to simply say, okay. I'll take this off and rehoop again. I'll be right back. When you remove the hoop, make sure you're pulling it out through the side. Okay, now I rehooped and I have my ending point within the embroiderable area. And I'm going to put my hook back on, making sure to manage all of this excess fabric. Gently put the hoop on. Okay, and my hoop looks exactly like it does here. I'm just going to say okay. And it's going to tell me that we're going to connect that center point. Okay, so we've got to move it. I'm going to move it up. Okay, now we're right on. Now we got to check our other corners. So let's check this. And we're a little off there. We're right on there. And we're a little off there. Now I'm just going to say okay. And now I have my rotation keys. So it says use the rotate keys to size and adjust the angle and size of the pattern work, keeping an eye on the pattern edges. And you'll just say okay. Now what I can do is my scissors out of that area. Get back to my layout. So I want to move this down, and if you see, we got some new keys here. These are the rotate keys, and these will move a pattern in. If this was outside the line, I would move it in here. That would shrink it up a little bit. And if it was in here, I could stretch it out. If it's up here, you could stretch it down. And if it's beyond at the bottom, then you would shrink it up. So those are the new keys here. So what we need to do is we need to move it down. Oh, actually up. Okay, let's check our areas. We're right on there. That's okay. Let's check that top. We're right on. Now if I go into layout and move, I've got my center key here, and that still is right on. I'm just going to move it just a tad to the left. There we go. Now we're ready to go, and it's going to embroider that area. So say okay, lower my foot, and start. And there it is, starts right on. We're on our last round here. Everything's lining up just beautifully. And it stops right on that line. So now we're going to go, and it's going to stitch 2 arrows now, and that's for placement for the second row. Those are our arrows to line up. And now we're going to rehoop again, and it says here embroidery is finished. Okay, to connect the next pattern, and you'll say okay. And now it's telling me to go to the second row here. So that's what we're going to do now. Okay, now we're getting ready to stitch the second row. I've rehooped, and right now it's telling me that 1 row is finished. To start with the next row, rehoop the fabric to the left edge of the next row. So we did that while including the thread mark of the upper pattern in the hoop, which we did. And I'm just going to say okay. And now it's telling me to use the move key patterns to align the upper left corner of the pattern area with the lower left thread mark of the upper pattern. So the arrow that stitched out on that first pattern, we're going to line this up with that. So I'm going to say okay. And now I'm going to use this little crosshair to get up to the arrow. So I'm going to move it. And it looks like it's got to go over and down. Down. Okay. We're right on that one. And then you'll just say, okay. Now it's going to tell me to line up the second arrow. It says use the rotate keys. So we're going to use the rotate keys and size keys to adjust the angle and the size of the pattern while keeping an eye on the edges of the pattern. So we just got to keep an eye on these edges, okay? Say okay. Okay, so it's down just a little bit. So we're going to rotate up. And I'm going to move it in just a little bit. Maybe one more. There. Now we can check our other arrow. And that's still right on. So we can say okay. Now we've got this bottom area now too. So we need to stretch this to get this down. So we're going to stretch this down. Okay. And we're going to move it just a little bit here. Okay, let's check our top corner, see if our arrow's there. Bottom's fine, bottom middle, side's fine, coming up in. So we're all set to go for our first stitch out on the second row. So I want to check again my fabric so I can make sure it's out of the way. I'm going to say okay, lower my foot, and start. Okay, the second row, first design is done. Embroidery is finished. Okay, to connect to the next pattern, you're going to say okay. Okay, now we're doing the second row, the middle. So we're going to have to re-hoop and towards the right, we'll include the edge of the pattern on the right and thread mark of the pattern above. So we're going to re-hoop and we're right back. Okay, now we're in the fifth section, which is the middle of the bottom row. And we've got our hoop with the two arrows in here. And we're just going to say okay. And now it's going to tell me to move the pattern keys to align the start point with the end point of the previous pattern. They'll just say okay. And now what I got to do is get this lined up with this, the end point. That crosshair should be right on that end point. Let me move it up a little bit. Perfect. So now I'm just going to say okay. Now it's going to tell me to use the rotate and size keys to adjust the angle and the size of the pattern while keeping an eye on the edges of the pattern. So I'm going to say okay to that. Okay. So this one I just need to move out a little bit. And we're going to move it up a little bit. Okay, let's check the other. Okay, let's rotate that just a little bit. We're getting there. Okay, now let's check this bottom corner. And that's right on. And we're going to rotate just a teeny bit. Okay. Now we're ready to stitch. Lower our foot and start. Lost our thread here. And let's take it back a couple stitches. Okay, here we go. Right on. Okay, the embroidery is finished. It's okay to connect the next pattern. And we're going to say okay. And now it's going to tell us to hoop with the next two arrows. So I'm going to re-hoop and I'll be right back. Okay, I've got my center fixed and I used my size and rotate keys. And I checked my corners and everything looks good. Everything's lined up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and put my foot down and up. Okay, put my foot down and start. So it's right on there, right on the mounting. And this is our last section, and that will be the end of the front of the pillow. Okay, we ended right on that 15-inch mark. So now we're finished embroidering. Just say okay and return. Okay, now we'll remove our hoop and unhoop our fabric. With my 10-inch magnetic hoop. And whenever you store the hoop, you always want to have something between the magnets and the hoop. So this bubble wrap came with it. I'm just going to stick with it right here. And if something happens to that, then I'll just use a piece of fabric or something. But there we go. That's how we store our hoop. And we can put it right back in the box or do whatever you do to put that away. Now, this is our stitch 15-inch square. And didn't that make a nice little stitch out? Everything ended up perfect on the ends. And it's 15 inches, so you know your seam allowance is going to have all this stuff in it. Now this is the front of the pillow, and then you would do the same for the back of the pillow. Now you can construct your pillow the way you prefer to construct it. What I did is I put right side, I embroidered something on it, so you could probably embroider sewing or whatever you wanted on here. And oh, by the way, you have to remove these little arrows. Just take your seam ripper and just remove those little arrows that's stitched out. The ones in the seam allowance I wouldn't worry about, but you got two here that you need to remove. And then what you would do is you put your, you could embroider on this front or whatever you want. And then the back, I just cut it in half, and I use this cute little decorative zipper. And there we got that. And you just put your zipper on the top on this particular one. And you can look anywhere for decorative zippers. Cut it in half, so put your right sides together. If you want to use a piping of some type, I put these little balls on this one because I thought it reminded me of snowballs. So you can use these edge-to-edge designs for just about any fabric you want to construct. So you can use this for making other things other than pillows. Have the ability to make the size you want and the design, one of the 10 designs that are built in. And it's really fun to do that. So if you're interested in any of these things, we did use the Fusion fleece on the back of this. This is 15 inches wide. And the 505 temporary spray. And of course, the star of the show was the upgrade for the Solaris 3, which I have, or you can use the Vision sewing machine. So if you have any questions, contact Larry or Annette at Phil's Sewing in Washington, Missouri. And until next time.